Hi folks, we are in the Cobb TV studio for our weekly visit with Cobb Commission Chairman Mike Boyce. And Chairman, we've gotten over the hump with the budget and many of our big things, and so it's kind of a relaxing time for us in some respects, but in other respects, if you work on the fourth floor in finance, it is not.
No, but I think the most important part that we have to talk about today is that you and I have to get together on our dress code.
Formal or informal?
It doesn't matter. Apparently, no matter when I do one thing, you do the other. Well, listen, we've had, it's been more than a week since we passed the budget. I think it's a good time just to summarize where we have been over the last 2.5 years since I came into office. The first spring I was there in 2017, we passed the paying class study. And that was roughly a little bit more, there was more than $10 million that we had set aside in contingency money, knowing that we were going to have to address the paying class study, but we had not addressed it at the time that I was elected. And I thought it was important that we send a message to the employees that although this study had its problems, and there's no question about it, they did have their problems, it was heavily criticized, you have to weigh that against, do we want to once again make a promise to our employees and then not follow through? So I thought it was important that no matter how fractured this study was, it did more good to pass it than to wait another year and try to fix it. So we passed it, and there were some issues there, and we addressed them as we went along. For instance, we had to provide another $1 million because of compression issues for our police and sheriff lieutenants. But that's $10.2 million that we put in that out of our 4,500 employees, roughly 4,500 employees who work for all kinds of people in the county, 2,400 of them received additional compensation. And out of that 2,400, 1,200 were public safety. And so here we are 2 years later, once again addressing the issue of compensation for public safety. And part of the problem is that, and we're going to have this again, no question about it, even with this significant increase for public safety, is that all our friends around us, our cities and counties that are our neighbors, are going to see that we plussed up our public safety, and they're going to plus theirs up too, to try and retain their officers. And well, we're going to be bumping up against the ceiling because you can only go to the well so often and ask our public to provide additional money for certain programs when they finally say, you know, much as I appreciate what you're doing here, the answer is no. So we're going to see what happens here as far as the public safety increased compensation go, whether or not it has an impact on retention. But that's just sort of a tangent. Let's talk about what happened last year, which was this famous budget, this famous chart that we all saw during the town halls. And Ross assures me you're going to be seeing this on the screen. But the bottom line here is that the second year I was in office, we additionally provided additional compensation for public safety in the form of providing more money in the budget for new police officers, buying more cars, and buying body cameras, and as well as addressing, again, medical issues at the jail as we did this year. But we also did some other things that are on the chart. Being a big advocate that I believe that our libraries are the cornerstone for a cultured and educated society. We restored operating hours for every library in the county 6 days a week, Monday through Saturday, and then 4 of our regional libraries were opened up on Sunday. And we did some additional things this year that I'll talk about later on. But I think it's important to recognize here that in the Department of Transportation, we added another $6 million. And out of that, 1.6 was to address the right-of-way mowing and the garbage and the potholes in the road. And as you'll see here that I'll talk about in this year's budget, that wasn't quite enough to cover all our issues. We still have those issues out there. But that's what the budget looked like last year. And I've read in the media that they're focusing on the fact that it was $30 million. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that $30 million, which is 1.1 mil, is what we started the budget process with in January of 2018. But as we went through the budget process and the commissioners weighed in, Commissioner Weatherford at the time convinced me that we needed to add $15 million to public safety, and that added another roughly 0.6 mils to the millage rate that I was proposing. So yes, I started out with $1.1 million. That was simply to fill a $30 million hole, which was a direct result of the board in 2016 rolling back the millage rate by half a mil without compensating for the additional funding that's going to be required to fill that hole. And what they did in 2017 in the vote for the budget was they simply drew down on all our contingency buckets to fill that hole rather than approve the millage rate, which included an automatic 0.23 mil increase because of the fact that we now had to pay for the Bravey Stadium. So when I came into office, there was already going to be a 0.23 mil increase in the budget, and for people whether they liked it or not, as a result of the Braves agreement. So I got hung with that tax hike Mike thing, but the bottom line here is I had a responsibility to write a budget to pay our bills, and we paid our bills. But in so doing, we darn near lost our AAA rating, because when I went to New York last year and they saw how we paid our bills, they said, don't come back with that same kind of program next year. And we didn't. And we'll see that here shortly. So this 1.7 mils was not only to cover the shortfall made up by rolling back the millage rate, but was also to do additional things in the county that either needed to be done or I thought needed to be done based on my belief and what I thought the expectations were of the public. So what happened this year? This year at the town halls, I started with this chart where I wanted to increase compensation for all our employees and also some other things. And this is the chart that I saw, that I showed at the 16 town halls. Well, guess what? We again had the budget process, and as a result of that budget process, including the town halls, we heard from the citizens that they didn't believe that what we're providing compensation for public safety was enough. They did not believe that our proposed 3% pay raise was enough for our police officers. So as a result of what we heard there, we changed that 3% to a 7% for every fireman, sheriff, and police officer, plus some certified officers over at the district attorney and solicitor's office. And that's the budget that we passed last Tuesday. But that additional money, all right, that 7% added up to a little over $5.2 million, just for those officers alone. Plus the firemen, they get paid out of the fire fund. That's another $3.6 million. So it's a little over $8 million just to take care of the 750 police officers, 750 sheriffs, and I believe the same number of firemen plus a few other officers in the other offices. So my proposed $7.2 million just to take care of all the employees, all right, that wasn't going to cover what we heard from the citizens wanting to plus up the public safety. So the bottom line is that we're probably in the neighborhood going to cost us $12 million for increased compensation for all the employees who will get a 4% pay raise this year, vice the 3% that I started with, plus the 7% for our police, sheriff, and firemen. And that's the cost of doing business for a five-star county. If you want good people, you got to pay them a good salary for them to stay here. And I'm hoping that this increased compensation that we provided them this year was going to convince them that this is the best place for them to stay. Moreover, as you well know, we provided all our certified officers a one-time bonus of $1,475 in order to try and get them to stay here. And we paid for that out of the unfilled slots that we had in our budget. And I'll go back to my previous chart from last year. So hopefully they'll bring the other chart up here. In this chart, we had additional 23 more police officers that we funded. Well, the bottom line is, ladies and gentlemen, that even though we left that in the budget, we simply couldn't fill those positions. So that money sat there, and we had some other positions that we couldn't fill, in addition to the 23. Matter of fact, it was probably close to 90, so we had 90 slots that were unfunded, and so that was money that was laying around, and from that money, we used it to pay for the bonuses. Now, could we have just saved that money? I guess, but it was decided by the board, and it was voted on the board, not unanimously, but I believe by consensus, that we needed to take that money and roll it into a retention as well as do some other things for our public safety. But I think you get the idea right now of how complicated this process can be. But more importantly, all right, again, like last year, bring up the other chart here, we had enough money to start rolling back the water fund transfer. And why is that important? Because that leaves money in the water system where that doesn't mean we may not have to come and ask for a water rate increase next year. We did last year, but that all goes to the narrative I've been pushing here, is that we were left with some significant holes that had to be filled. And as a responsible government, it is our job to make the hard calls. And those hard calls involve the tax raise and also tax and water rate increases. Nobody likes that to happen. I'll be very clear about that. No, including me, because I pay these fees as much as anybody else does. But ladies and gentlemen, we were elected to make the hard calls. And the hard call here is that we are committed to preserving our 5-star status in this county, and quality is not cheap, and you have to pay money to keep that. So just want to let you know what the whole story is. The bottom line is that even though I committed to open and transparent government, that doesn't mean you necessarily like what I was going to be telling you. But what I'm telling you is the truth. We had a hole. It wasn't going to be filled by cutbacks and efficiencies. The hole was too big. Last year, we needed a millage rate. But this year, we didn't need a millage rate. And I get all this thing about when is a tax raise not a tax raise. Well, it's not a tax raise in the general fund this year because the millage rate stayed the same and your general fund property taxes stayed the same. Why is that? Because those of you who own a home and applied for the floating homestead exemption, that freezes your appraised value at your home for the rest of the time you live in that house. So if you look at your tax bill, there was no tax raise on that part of your tax bill because of the floating exemption. But I made it also very clear that there would be tax raises, small ones, for the parks bond and for the fire fund, both that are tax items that you voted for as taxpayers, that's how you wanted to pay for those services. 2008, you wanted new parks. We got you new parks, but you had to pay for them. And the fire fund, that's been around forever, but also voted by the voters in a referendum saying this is how you want to pay for your fire fund. But this year, in the process of going through the town halls and listening to the commissioners, we made some changes on this chart. In order to help pay for the public safety plus-ups, I agreed to reduce the contribution to the libraries by $400,000. And as much as I was committed to restoring Sunday hours, the Public Services Department, in conjunction with their liaison, Commissioner Gamble, decided that $400,000 was better spent somewhere else on materials. That's, again, listening to your staff and constituents, what's the best way to use your money. So the $400,000 was not going to go to restoring Sunday hours. As much as I liked it, the bottom line is what's a higher priority? The higher priority was public safety and also making sure that we had enough material to keep our libraries open. So when you walked in there, you walked into something that the material was there for you to use. The public health funding, when the federal government came across with $250,000 to handle neonatal programs, that allowed us to reduce that $500,000 from our chart down to $250,000, which allowed us, again, to use that money against public safety, and then eliminating the senior fees, which is popular for all the seniors. So we don't bring that income, we lose that income, but again, since the seniors, for most of them, live in homes where they pay against the general fund, there's no sense double taxing them by having them pay into their general fund and then also making them pay for the seniors, senior center. So we got rid of that fee. But also during this process, hearing from other members of the staff, is we came across two important issues. One of them is that we have an internal audit department here that has roughly 4,000 hours of activity that they have to do every year, and they simply can't meet that number because they don't have the staff. But we live in an age right now of people that are trying to hack into our systems. Cybersecurity is a big, important part of every government. As we just saw here, a local government was held for ransom because their system was hijacked. We have to make sure that both our internal support information systems and our internal audit are working together to make sure that we're doing everything we possibly can to protect this county against cyber attacks. And I know it's complicated, but the bottom line is they needed more money, and it was brought up by one of the commissioners. So we changed some of these line items in our budget to provide internal audit with some more money. The second thing is that as I drive around this county here, litter is still a monumental problem. Now, we added $1.6 million to the budget last year for the right-of-way mowing and picking up garbage. But as I did a tour here recently with Kimberly White from Keep Cobb Beautiful, drove around the county doing a litter index, it's just amazing how much garbage there's out there in spite of the fact that we've added more money last year. So we put another $175,000 into the budget for Kimberly White's department simply for the purpose of going around picking up garbage. And I realize that there are a lot of bad actors out there, but we're responsible for picking up that garbage. You know, I can't go find these people and say, hey, would you mind picking up your garbage? They throw it out there and you expect us to pick it up, and we're going to be doing it. But I wouldn't be surprised if next year's budget we have to add even more, because I'm not the only one that notices this garbage, that it's unsightly and just doesn't reflect the best part of this county. So there we are in the budget process. It's iterative, it moves along, but it does one thing only. It meets the needs that you expect of us. So as a result of what's happened here Every library is open 6 days a week and 4 on Sundays. Your senior centers are open and they're all free to you now. Your baseball parks, your aquatic centers, every one of them's open on time with fully staffed and you're safe there. The lawns are mowed, the equipment's there. I could go on and on. But most important part though is that we finally have provided our public safety with a compensation that goes in along with the best equipment, the best training that they have, and the best leadership to reflect the quality that you need, which is our number one priority in this county, which is to keep you safe. I don't care where you are in this county, everyone is entitled to feel like they're safe. And we're well on our road over the last 3 years to doing just that. It's taken us a while to dig out of this hole, and it was a hole. But we are committed as a board to doing just that, as well as reflecting that we appreciate how much our staff does by giving them a 4% pay raise. Not giving them, they've earned it. They've worked hard for it because there are a lot of things that they do on their back that they don't get credit for. So this year, I believe that, as I said last year, that the millage rate we got last year, along with tax digest, will pay for all those items that we need to keep your life a 5-star quality, and it's a place where we could all safely work, live, play, and pursue our dreams.
And again, this goes back to the narrative we heard during the public hearings that the hole last year was filled and why we couldn't roll back the millage rate, but you just outlined some of the reasons where that money went.
Well, listen, it was a hole, but I think it's important to realize is that the AAA bond rating is so important to this county. As you well know, what was probably lost at last week's budget discussion or board meeting was at the very end of the meeting there, we passed an agenda item that allows us to refinance one of our water department bonds. And by so doing, we have saved those who use the water system over $10 million. That $10 million can be used by the water department to address such things as more than 60 miles of stormwater pipes that we have in this county need to be replaced or repaired. We have ongoing issues here every single day, and you simply cannot do more with less. I got a tour yesterday of the new police training facility. The current facility is about 25,000 square feet. The new one that we bought a warehouse a number of months ago that we're going to convert into a training facility. That new facility is over 125,000 square feet. Why is it so big? Well, in 1995, when we built the current training facility, we had a little over 300 officers in our police department. Today, we have over 750. And secondly, the kind of training that's required to meet the expectations of the public, are so much more demanding and require greater training facilities. So this facility is going to actually have a feature where you can drive into the building and do an active shooter situation, without real bullets of course, but an active shooter situation where the car's inside, there's stores, there's houses, so an officer can get a feel for what it's like. We didn't have these problems 25 years ago, all right? Active shooters 25 years ago compared to today were almost like, what civilized society would go around gunning down people? Well, fortunately we haven't had that situation here, and it's our worst fear, but if it happens, we need to be prepared for it. So what is it again do you expect of us for a 5-star county? Well, you need to go out and make sure we provide the best training and equipment and leadership we have for our police officers and sheriff's and firemen, and we do that here, but it doesn't come cheap. And fortunately, we have this thing called SPLOST, where we can pay for these facilities, because I'll guarantee you that if we needed to pay for them out of general fund, your millage rate would be back over 12, which is what it was in the late 1990s before we went to SPLOST.
Yeah. And you mentioned that Commissioner Ott had some good thoughts about road paving.
Absolutely.
And the situation the
Right.
county faces now, and I could bring this chart up if I don't kill either one of us, but this is, I guess you said this is pretty telling about what he was talking about.
Very telling. Well, this chart has been in my office for about 6 months now, because I just want to let you look at a couple things here on this chart. First of all, this red line here on the chart reflects the resurfacing costs per square yard for today's program. So look, back in 2012, which was 7 years ago, it was roughly about a little under $5.5 million. All right, now it's up to 20. I think I probably got the numbers wrong here, but the bottom line here is the cost of repaving roads has gone up almost 3.5 times just in 7 years. This blue line right here reflects the cost of what it is, the conditions of our roads. And the roads conditions are getting worse. Why is that? Because in the 2016 SPLOST, we did not put enough money in there to resurface our roads. And I wasn't around for that SPLOST, and I don't want to throw anybody under the bus. But the bottom line here is that we did not put enough money into the SPLOST, either SPLOST, to address the road situations in the county. And you see what's happened here is even though, because the costs have gone up and the road conditions have gone down, because for a fixed amount of money, you only be able to pave less. Now, we're going to be able, I think, with this current SPLOST to go back and fix some of that, because the law allows us to go back to Tier 1 projects and add money to those projects after we have paid for all the other Tier 1 projects in our 2016 SPLOST, all right? But we're probably a couple years away from doing that. And at the end of that time, I'm hoping we can put more money back into the road surfacing program here. But what does this tell you? It tells you two things. First of all, how much money we would have to raise, put back in the general fund if we did not renew the 2022 SPLOST with road resurfacing in there. We spend roughly about, I think, $30 million a year on road resurfacing, and that's about 1.1 mils. So we'd have to raise your millage rate by 2 mils just to address road surfacing in this county. And because we didn't put enough money into road surfacing into the SPLOST, the reality is we would probably have to add anywhere from 3 to 4 mils to really bring the roads back to where they need to be, where they were 10 years ago. So that's a strong argument, if nothing else, why we need to do the SPLOST. Well, one of those, if nothing else, why one of those projects in the SPLOST has to be road surfacing. And it's going to have to be a large chunk of it. Because if we don't do that, if we don't pass the SPLOST, or we don't put road surfacing back into the SPLOST as one of the projects, whoever takes my place is going to have to raise your millage rate. There's no way you can do this program without raising your millage rate. And that'll take you back over 10 mils. And you saw the fight that I went through last year for 1.7 mils. Imagine the fight the new chairman is going to have to try and add 2 or 3 mils to that, regardless of the good reason for it. So this chart is just one example of what it is that's going on in our life right now that we face every day as a board, trying to make sure that we provide the necessary resources to continue to provide you, all of you, with a high-class style of living here that you expect out of us. But again, it doesn't come cheap, and life right now is making it even tougher because of inflation and other reasons why the cost of repaving is going up.
Yeah, that's interesting stuff. And I know time's limited here, but we did want to talk briefly about the situation down in Smyrna with the Sterigenics plant. Right. And there was one community meeting. We've got one plant here in the county coming up on the 19th, and just how we're addressing their concerns.
Well, I think this reflects Cobb County at its best. First of all, we really hear the concerns of the citizens around this plant, okay? And I'll tell you how serious we take this is how fast we've reacted to this. Because this first came onto the surface late last week on Facebook posts by members of the community. And they had a meeting earlier this week. And as a result of that meeting, we realized that we had to come together collectively with a delegation as well as the state to try and address this situation, which involves cancer-producing products. And we do not want to make light of this. Regardless of how small the emission is, I believe that the concern of the citizens is any emission that produces a cancer, might produce a cancer effect on you, is unacceptable. So we're working with the city of Smyrna to join with them in our own independent study. That shows one thing. The second thing is we're working with the delegation to host a meeting on August 19th with state officials, federal officials, elected, both means agencies as well as elected officials. My understanding is Congressman Scott will also be at that meeting, as well as members of the board. We're working real hard right now to do all we can to let the citizens of this county know, regardless of where you live, that we hear you. We want to fix this, and we want to fix this soon. And we do want to make sure that whatever you feel endangers you or your children, we feel the same way about that, and we're doing every single action that lets you know that we're right behind you.
And we have posted a pretty big spot on our front page at cobbcounty.org that's got all the latest information on it, and it's really updated daily at this point.
It is, right.
So people can go to that and figure out what the latest is.
Right, and Commissioner Rod has been leading this. This plan is in his district. The other night there was a meeting where Commissioner Cooper was there also, and because the meeting was advertised so late, we couldn't get a public notice out to allow us all the commissioners who wanted to attend. So don't read anything into the fact that all the commissioners weren't there. It was a matter of a quorum, and when you have a quorum, you have to advertise the meeting so we can all legally be there. But I can assure you that that notice is going out for the August 19th meeting, and all of us that are concerned about this, and I can assure you, I don't know of a single commissioner that's not, including myself. I'm very confident that there will be a number of elected officials be there to let people know that you'll be amazed what we've done from the meeting this week between now and August 19th.
Boy, the situation, though, at the meeting the other night shows you just how many layers are involved. That's what kind of makes this frustrating for residents, I think.
It does, but I think you should also take comfort in knowing that this is a bipartisan effort and a multi-government effort. It doesn't involve people on both sides of the aisle politically, but also involves other governments. You know, we have to work with the city of Marietta, and there might be other cities impacted by that also. So I think that we're all speaking together. It also shows you the power of social media and how important, how quickly a cause that's important to the citizens of this county, they now have the channel and the mechanism to grab your attention as a government. And if you don't hear them, you do that, you know, to your own sadness later on that you didn't jump on that. When they made it very clear that they expect you to do something about this, and we are doing something about this, and very promptly.
Some will watch this video before Saturday, others after Saturday, but Saturday is a big international flair in Cobb County.
Yeah, we have the International Film Festival Friday and Saturday at the Strand Theater, and then of course we have the International Festival at Jim Miller Park on Saturday. And I would encourage everybody, you know, as summer winds down here, to take advantage of these two great opportunities to appreciate not only the diversity in Cobb County and our people, but also the diversity of film that's out there. So once again, the challenge you have this coming weekend, there's so many things out there, what are we going to do? But I would be a big proponent of going to the film festival at the Strand Theater, and of course going to the festival at the Jim Miller Park on Saturday. And the one on Saturday, I know it's free, just got to show up. There'll be vendors there offering their sampling of great food. And the film festival may have a modest cost, but nonetheless, it's worth the time.
Yep, the International Festival at Jim R. Miller Park has a lot of kids activities.
Right.
Take your kids there, get the minds off the fact that they're going back to school this week. All right, sign up for all our newsletters on cobbcounty.org, and of course subscribe to our social media channels. We have many of them. You can get all the latest information, and we'll be back next week.